All right, since the live stream has started and we do have most of our members here, I'll go ahead and start. So welcome everybody to the first Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Advisory Committee of the 2022 meeting year, starting off at the end of 2021, always confusing. So before we do our election of officers, I'll just do a quick rundown of the people in attendance today. So for the committee, we do have quorum. We have received regrets from Zerman Khan and Charan Krishnaswamy. They will not be able to attend. Elsa B. Falkson will be joining us partway through the meeting. And I believe Vanessa Gerasimo will be joining shortly as well. From staff, we have with us Laney Hurdle, the Chief Administrative Officer, Mohammed Hassan, the EDI Manager, Vanessa Mensa, the Project Manager for EDI Initiatives. We have John Bolognone, the City Clerk, Janet James, the Deputy City Clerk, Blair Johnson, the Corporate Records and Information Officer. You have myself, Derek O'Shea, the Committee Clerk. We also have Ruth Nordegraaf, the Director of Housing and Social Services. And my colleague Elizabeth Fawcett is here as the meeting host. We also do have one member of the public in attendance as well. And with that out of the way, we'll do the election of officers. So I will call to see if there are any nominations or volunteers for the position of chair. Manuela, I'll take that as you're volunteering to carry on your role as chair. Excellent. Yes, thank you, Manuela. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none. Also, I'll ask for a mover. I have River moving. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Neil. I'll just write these down quickly. And in that case, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And I'm not seeing any opposed, so congratulations, Manuela. And we will now move to the election of vice chair. Are there any volunteers or nominations for the position of vice chair? River, are you volunteering to continue your role?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent, thank you, River. Is there a mover and a seconder for that? For River, Manuela, Sunita, thank you. I'm going to assume there are no more volunteers. I'm not seeing any hands. So I'll call the vote on those. All those in favor of River Hill as the vice chair. I'm seeing hands up. Excellent. And that passes as well. And with that, I will now turn things back over to our chair, Manuela.
Thank you very much. I now call this meeting to order at 1:03 p.m. Next on the agenda, we have the approval of the agenda. So I'm calling for a vote for all those in favor.
If we could just get a mover and a seconder first.
Thank you. My apologies. Can I please get a mover and a seconder? Perfect. River and Hal, Councillor Neil. Now I'm calling for a vote for all those in favor of the agenda. Okay. And any opposed? Okay. So the agenda will carry forward. So next we have the confirmation of minutes. Does anybody have any changes that they'd like to make? If so, please raise your hand. Oh, my apologies. Can I please get a mover and a seconder for the confirmation of the minutes? Thank you, Councillor Neil and Sunita. Is there, now I'm looking for all in favor. Perfect. Any opposed? Okay. Perfect. The minutes have been confirmed. So next we're moving on to pecuniary interest. Does anybody have pecuniary interest to declare? I'll give folks a few minutes to respond if so. Right, I don't see any hands. Moving on to delegations. I'm aware that there is a member of the public. Would you, as a member of the public that is here, if you'd like to speak to an agenda item or a topic within the mandate of the committee, you're welcome to do so.
And Wella, we will, that comes up during the individual business items. The public opportunity delegations is for people who register in advance. So we do not have any of those, so we can carry on.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so now we are moving on to the briefings. First on the agenda, we have Blair Johnson, Corporate Records and Information Officer. And I believe that you're speaking to the committee regarding a report.
Yes, thank you. Elizabeth, would you be able to start? Thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Blair Johnson, and I'm the city's Corporate Records and Information Officer. So I'm one of the staff who assisted with the gathering of the information and the drafting of the report that you see here today. I'm here to provide a briefing to the report regarding the board and committee nominations process and equity, diversity, and inclusion. Next slide, please. In December 2020, 2 motions were passed by council that prompted the review detailed in this report. The first motion directed staff to prepare a SWOT analysis of the current nominations process for filling citizens' appointments to boards and committees, such as this committee, and to research the municipal best practices in this area. The second motion directed staff to review the framework from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities entitled Run, Win, and Lead Toward Parity in Municipal Politics, a municipal sector framework for achieving gender parity in local government, and provide council with recommendations for increasing the rates of underrepresented people on boards and committees and in the municipal candidates process for the 2022 election. Next slide, please. With regards to the first motion, staff conducted an online survey which received 84 responses. The survey was focused on receiving public feedback on the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the current nominations process for citizen appointments to boards and committees. In the survey, most respondents indicated that they had understood the application process, the requirements to serve on committees, and the mandates of the committees. Most respondents also indicated that they found the application form easy to follow. Neutral responses were generally received with regards to the ease of the application process and receiving responses from staff in a timely manner. The majority of respondents indicated that they would prefer to learn about the recruitment process through the city's website and social media. Next slide, please. In addition to the responses summarized in the previous slide, survey respondents were given the opportunity to answer an open-ended question. What are your ideas to increase diversity on municipal boards and committees? The responses can be summarized into 3 general themes in descending order of frequency. Number 1, advertisement of volunteer opportunities on boards and committees should be targeted to specific groups and the members of those groups that may be interested in serving or have the necessary skill set for that board or committee. The city should leverage the existing social infrastructure in the city to help generate candidates. The city should also work to structure meetings, such as locations and times, around the needs of those individuals and groups. Number 2, offer compensation. Offer compensation to volunteers serving on a committee or board. This includes both direct monetary compensation, as well as providing directly for or providing restitution for transportation and childcare. The city does not currently provide any compensation or restitution to citizen appointees on boards or committees. Number 3, the city should target individuals with lived experience when considering the skill set necessary for a person to serve on a board or committee. Next slide, please. In addition to the survey, staff researched the best practices of 28 Ontario municipalities with regard to their process for recruiting and appointing citizen representatives to boards and committees. In Kingston, 6 council members serve on the Nominations Advisory Committee. The members of this committee meet in a public meeting to discuss and select citizen representatives to serve on boards and committees, making a final recommendation to Kingston City Council, which confirms the appointments. The Nominations Committee votes on a majority rules basis. 16 municipalities were found not to have a process similar to Kingston. Of those with a similar process, the voting process was found to be similar to that used in Kingston. Some other municipalities have their citizen representatives selected by members of council in meetings closed to the public, while others have citizen representatives recommend other citizens for appointment to boards and committees. 7 municipalities surveyed utilized the interview process for those volunteering to serve on a committee or a board. 4 municipalities have a process for interviews, but rarely use them. Next slide, please. The second motion from council is similar to the first motion discussed. This motion directed staff to provide council with recommendations on increasing the rates of underrepresented people on municipal committees and boards, and incorporating the equity goals of the FCM's municipal sector framework for achieving gender parity in local government for the 2022 municipal election candidate process. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities document is a guide established to help improve diversity and gender equity for municipalities. Staff review this document through the lens of the city's current processes with regards to the recruitment and nominations process for boards and committees, as well as the information sharing process for those interested in running for municipal council. A main component of the document is the 3 key actions and the recommendations contained within those actions. So the 3 key actions are, number 1, mentorship and encouragement, focused on providing formal and informal networking opportunities, peer networking, and creating a pipeline of candidates by providing support for an early age and celebrating successful leaders for underrepresented groups. Number 2, breaking down informal networking and decision-making, which focuses on engaging stakeholders and addressing exclusionary behaviors such as unconscious bias and stereotypes. Number 3, improved access and sharing of tools, which includes addressing information gaps for those interested in running for council, increasing awareness and positive perception of municipal politics, and collecting and the sharing of data. Next slide, please. So based on the review of the previously discussed information, staff are putting forth a series of recommendations that we would like to receive feedback from the committee on. Staff have begun work to reach out to specific community organizations and groups when recruiting for positions on boards and committees, and will continue to expand contacts and connections in this area. Staff will work to enhance advertising and volunteer opportunities on boards and committees through the use of social media alongside other traditional forms of advertising in a multimedia approach. Staff are not recommending the compensation be provided to board and committee members at this time, but will continue to examine forms of monetary and non-monetary compensation and the associated budget implications. Staff are proposing that the mandate of the Nominations Advisory Committee be amended to add 3 public members of the EDI Committee to the Nominations Advisory Committee. Staff are also proposing that 3 separate interview panels be created, each consisting of 2 council members and one EDI committee member from the Nominations Advisory Committee. These panels would be supported by city staff and would only be utilized when the Nominations Advisory Committee wished to interview applicants for citizen appointments. Staff are proposing the creation of mentorship opportunities to connect experienced committee members with new committee members. Next slide, please. Staff will track and report on the success of diversity initiatives annually through summary data presented to the Nominations Advisory Committee based on data provided in the voluntary diversity identification forms submitted by applicants. The recommendations contained in the 3 key actions from the Run, Win, and Lead document will be used by staff to assist underrepresented individuals who are interested in serving on boards and committees and Kingston City Council. As part of these initiatives, and in preparation for the 2022 municipal election, staff will continue to host candidate information sessions, augmenting in-person sessions with live streaming and virtual options. Finally, staff are recommending the creation of a public appointment policy attached to this report as Exhibit D. This policy takes information regarding the appointment process that is contained across multiple documents and bylaws and combines them into one policy, increasing the transparency of the process for the public. Next slide, please. So that concludes the presentation. Staff are happy to answer any questions that you may have. So thank you very much for your time.
Yes, River, go ahead.
Hi there. I just wanted to know if there was any additional information on the foregoing of compensating.
I see Mohammed has his hand up.
So, Madam Chair, through you, we will be in today's agenda presenting a pilot program for Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee that talks about the compensation for people with lived experiences. Doing that pilot will give us more information in creating a compensation model more wholesome for other public committees and boards.
I see Councillor Holland has their hand up as well.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for the background noise. Can you hear me okay? Great, thank you. So yeah, thanks very much for the presentation. The one question I have regarding the work that would be done. I think Blair, you mentioned that there would be some targeted outreach to individuals with a variety of skill sets for each board or committee. But then does that also coincide with sort of targeted outreach to members of marginalized groups? I'm just thinking, like, for example, without any, because on the nominations committee, we rarely get the disclosure information with the applications. We do get it when the committee is where that's actually a requirement of the committee. For example, the Municipal Accessibility Advisory Committee, we get it for that one. We got it for the EDI committee, but I'm just wondering, like, will there be an attempt to make sure that we're doing that outreach both for skill sets, but also for diversity of backgrounds?
Thank you. I see John's hand is up.
Yes, thank you for that question, Councillor Holland. All options are on the table. We're taking a look at going forward with an EDI lens. So we will be targeting all those groups that you identified, including others that come up through our review. The issue through the pilot initially is to, as Mohammed said, set some foundational pieces. But the recruitment from an ongoing basis, we'll take a look at all the groups that you referenced as part of your question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And River, I see that you had your hand up previously. Did you want to ask a further question?
Oh, just to the previous topic about compensation and the building of like a separate committee, I believe. In response to Mohammed, if there's any chance for me to be involved with that, I would be happy to.
Thank you, River. And Councillor ONeil, you may go ahead.
Yeah, as far as compensation, I'm not in disagreement with that concept, but all committees aren't created equal. and there are some committees that are very, very kind of, a lot of intensive work takes place. There's other committees that are less so. And I've sat on boards and committees where there hasn't been compensation, but library board, for instance, they would give board members just at the end of each year some library swag from the Friends of the Library and a $50 gift card for Novel Idea. Anything that kind of recognizes and acknowledges and thanks people for their engagement, I think is a good thing. I think it's more important probably to make sure that if people need daycare in order to attend meetings, that's vitally important. I know of many single parents who I say, you should apply for this. Well, you know, I've got 2 kids at home. It's not easy. So I think addressing those kind of systemic issues would be very, very helpful. And there are some committees where the public serve on that would, I think, merit greater recognition. So.
Thank you, Councillor ONeil. I see Ophelia with your hand up. Go ahead.
I think this is just continuation of what Councillor ONeil was saying, because my question or clarification was around what exactly was compensation. And I think maybe using a different term, because when I think of compensation, it's sort of like I'm being paid to be on a board, and that sounds like a conflict to me. Whereas if we're looking at how are we going to eliminate and have more equity. So for instance, if what are the barriers to preventing people, as Councillor ONeil was talking about, to sitting on a board? Is it because, let's say we are one day meeting in person, is it because I don't have transportation to get to the meeting? So looking at barriers, because those people have lived experience and they will be valuable to being here, but because of a barrier of transportation or childcare, or maybe that they can't come at 6 o'clock because they could come at 7. So looking at the systemic barriers for people with lived experience I think maybe calling that a different word rather than compensation. And so being very clear what is compensation and what is just removing barriers and creating equity. Because I think that's more important. That's what this, this committee is about. We're looking at ways of bringing equality and equity to the city, but it's also bringing equality and equity and helping people to sit on various committees. So I think it's very important that we clarify the language.
Thank you, Ophelia. And I think I did see River's hand first, but Mohammed, I believe you might be answering the question. So go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, to you. May I request this committee to wait for compensation piece to be. We will bring forward the third. I'm not recommending that pilot yet. The report that is on the agenda is third report from Housing and Homelessness, which Ruth will be presenting. That report talks about the pilot project. So that would be more, like suitable point to discuss this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. And I'll go to River next. Go ahead, River.
I wasn't able to hear very clearly what Mohammed said. So I'm not sure if I'm able to continue this topic. I just wanted to mention quickly that when we are speaking, like when we're inviting people with lived experience into our spaces, they are not just people with lived experience, but they're people who are providing their expertise. And I think that that should be valued more than just something on a voluntary basis or something where you get compensated with swag. I think that the points with making things more accessible is a really, really great point, and I'm really for that. But I think that looking at other avenues and valuing people with lived experience is something we shouldn't, something we should also consider. Thank you.
Thank you, River. And I think Mohammed, you wanted to speak to that point. So go ahead and I'll go to that.
I've been informed my breaking earlier, so I was requesting. No, you cannot hear me.
It's just cutting in and out.
Oh my God.
Mohammed, I would recommend turning off your video. That will generally make things come through a bit more clearly.
Okay, I hope this time it works. Great, sorry about that. Madam Chair, through you, I want to bring this to everyone's attention that we will be discussing the compensation model in the report that is on the agenda as the third item. That is the pilot where we will be discussing it. This particular report does not talk about the compensation. So I would request the committee to hold their comments and feedback on the compensation piece until then, if that's possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. Did anybody else have any questions that they'd like to raise for this agenda item? All right, we will then be moving on to the business agenda item. So the title of this report is Information Report Regarding the Board/Committee Nominations Process and Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion.
So for this, Manuela, this was the report that Blair did the presentation and we've received feedback on. So perhaps what we can do here is invite the member of the public in attendance if they wish to ask a question or speak to this item. You can indicate to us your desire to do so by using the raise hand button in Zoom. And we'll give it a few seconds. I believe the person may be here to speak to business item C though. So I'm not seeing any hands raised, so we can move on to business item B then.
Excellent, thank you. So business item B is the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office Report Q4 2021. And I am not sure what the next step is here, Derek.
Nope, not a problem, Manuela. Mohammed would provide an introduction to this report, as I believe the report is from him.
Great, thank you, Derek. And go ahead, Mohammed.
Thank you very much. This particular report highlights Q4 updates of EDI office. So you can see that the initiative that were taking place in Q4 of 2021 are explained in this report. Some highlights of the information is the development of a land acknowledgement document and the council and committee report with EDI consideration, and details about employee census to establish corporate baseline. The breakdown of the EDI census is also part of the information report that is being presented here. And then there is summary of review and revision of current human resources policies through EDI lens, and also the inclusion of EDI as category for staff recognition awards, and inclusion of EDI as a competency for performance management, and development of persona template guide. So if anyone, any member of this committee has any question related to any of this item, please. Thank you very much.
Okay, does anybody have anything they'd like to ask? Don't see any hands. All right, so given that there are no questions, we will move on to item C, being the Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee, Terms of Reference Review Council. And the individual who is going to speak to that may proceed.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So for those of you that haven't met me, I'm Ruth. I'm the Director of Housing and Social Services. And I'm very, very excited to meet you all and have the ability to share this report with you and seek feedback. Before we bring this forward to our Housing and Homelessness Committee, and then ultimately towards Council for approval. Very, very pleased to have this committee, because I think this is, and I think we kind of already started the conversation in the first agenda item, because I think there's some great opportunities to look at some new ways of supporting or providing opportunities for people with lived experience or living experience to be part of some really important committees. So the report's in front of you. It's an information report, and it consists of kind of two key components. And I will start kind of to talk, to introduce the report. And I know Mr. Hassan also will have probably some items to add. The first component of the report is the updated or the proposed updated terms of reference for the Housing and Homelessness Committee. I know housing and homelessness has been on the radar quite a bit over the last few years. And with the existing housing and homelessness terms of references, we realized that it was really prudent to go through an update, because it was not necessarily fitting kind of the needs in the community. So in 2021, we as in members of the Housing and Homelessness Committee and city staff have worked through an updated terms of reference. And in this report, we highlighted the kind of key changes that are proposed. Such as the reporting structure. Right now, the committee reports, or the process of reporting for the committee goes through the Arts, Recreation and Community Policies Committee to Council. And the proposal is, given the significance of the housing and homelessness portfolio, that this would change and would move directly to Council. We are proposing some changes in the schedule of the meetings. But I think specifically where we are seeking some input from this committee is the composition of the membership. Again, the terms of reference were somewhat outdated, and we have provided a proposal of a new kind of membership proposal for this committee. And as you will see, kind of key here will be that we will be seeking 5 members of the public at large, with also specific preference given to specific equity-seeking groups. So really appreciate any of your insights and feedback on that. We did summarize in this report as well that we have been not only meeting with our members of the Housing and Homelessness Committee, but also did some engagements both through our City Get Involved page, but also by actively engaging with the various clients, people with lived experience and living experience, accessing various services in our community. And we did receive some feedback that also was used in the final terms of reference. So that's part 1 of this report. The other part of the report, as kind of already started, as we already started the conversation under item A, is the Honoraria pilot program. This program, or the reason why this is brought forward, is because City Council on June 22nd, 2021, actually passed a motion asking staff to do research and look at the opportunity to bring compensation or honorarium, or like look at kind of how can we again really break down some of the barriers for people to participate in this specific motion, committees that focus on the housing portfolio, and how we can include, best can include people that are either unhoused or precariously housed. So we included the motion because obviously this committee was formed after this motion was passed. And what we've done, and again, I will do a quick introduction and then see if Mohammed will have some additional pieces to add. But what we have done as staff is do obviously some background studies on kind of what is already happening in either our community or other communities. And you will see an overview of various kind of practices right now for both community partners and other municipalities that have implemented various honoraria pilots, or sorry, programs. And based on that information and the fact that we do believe that that is an important component to pilots, also in response to councils ask, we are obviously as staff suggesting that we start with a 1-year pilot project specifically for the Housing and Homelessness Committee membership, the public members, and see if obviously in the hopes that this is going to break down some of the barriers for people to participate in committees. With that, I do want to ask my colleague Mohammed if he would like to add a few more pieces, because I know Mohammed and Vanessa have been working on a lot of the research, and I'm sure I've been missing a couple of key details there as well. But really looking forward to get your feedback. We will, obviously it's an information report, so we want to kind of hear from you, take notes, and then take that information back to the committee and look at the, obviously go through the approval process as well. So passing it over to Mohammed, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director Nodegraph. I just want to echo some of the things that were said earlier, that it's important to remember that lived experience, if not represented on these advisory committees, means that we are missing an opportunity to hear from the right people, especially when you're talking about homeless lived experience, we are talking about someone who is definitely going through financial hardships. And if a compensation model is not introduced for the committees where people with lived experience should be represented, so that the right decisions and right recommendations are made by people with right lived experiences. So that's all I want to reiterate. And one thing that I would also like to establish here is that in the summary of the environmental scan that we conducted, you will see that we are not going to be the first municipality who's introducing. City of Toronto has been doing it for quite some time. And then different county, region of Waterloo has their own compensation models. And also during this municipal research, we discovered that there are several municipalities across Ontario that are entrusted to see what we will be bringing forward, so that they can use that as an example for their small and medium-sized municipalities. So if there are any questions, Dr. Nodrograph and I am here to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed, and thank you, Ruth. I believe I saw Sunita's hand go up first. So Sunita, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you for the opportunity, and through you, Madam Chair. Just building on the comments that were made earlier when we started discussing the compensation model. First of all, I really like the use of the word honoraria as opposed to compensation. I think there's a lot more respect and dignity, and that is what, again, this work is all about. So, again, I definitely prefer that term. The other thing is that the so-called honoraria, though, is, and this is where that imbalance perhaps comes in. Not everybody is in need. Like it is individuals that are more barriered that we want to hear from, that we want to include, and those are the individuals that we want to offer the honoraria to. And how can that be done in a respectful, confidential manner, so that when we are at the table, we are all still the same at that table. There is no, and I think that is just something, it is more of a comment than a question, but I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunita. And I guess, Ruth, you're going to answer, and Councillor Neil, I will call on you next. Go ahead, Ruth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, that's an excellent comment, and definitely something we have been like the process of how people can self-disclose in a confidential manner will be incredibly important. So we also have identified, and I think that's an important piece too. We have members of, I know we're specifically talking about housing and homelessness, obviously as a starting point, but we would have members that participate in the committee because they are representing their professional, like if once is there as part of their employment, they're also part of the committee. So we obviously would specifically be looking at members of the public, but we also would create a process that's confidential. It's not obviously going to be shared. It's like you are receiving the honorarium and you are not. So definitely an important piece that will be that we need to establish with the clerk's office as part of the onboarding.
Thank you very much, Ruth. And on to Councillor Neil for your question. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you, Sunita. You stole half of my conversation. I think honorarium is a much better term to use. When we think of compensation, we usually think about an hourly wage. If we get into that, I'll tell you, I support a minimum wage of $15. I support the concept of a living wage. And if those things came up through this, it might become very costly to the city. And that's the other hat I wear, is to try and keep things within our budget. So that's good. I do want to mention to Ruth, I think it's a really good idea that housing and homelessness becomes committee of council, so we don't have to report through ARC. I'm on ARC. I think it's a great committee, but it meets every 2 months. Housing and homelessness meets every 2 months. Something important can come up in housing and homelessness, and it'll take 4 months or possibly 5 months before it gets to council for consideration. And housing and homelessness, along with climate change, are our top 2 priorities. So it's really important that that isn't delayed in happening. So I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. River, go ahead with your question.
Through you, Chair. So I don't know how appropriate it is to share lived experience through this committee, but I just wanted to share a bit of a convincing point that kind of echoes what a lot of people are saying here, is that in my experience with homelessness, I was homeless and also volunteering and sitting on committees as I do. It's always been a thing for me, but a lot of the times I was almost like more excited to go to committees and volunteer because maybe there would be food provided. Maybe I would get like a gift card. And those little things really do help when you're struggling. So just wanting to show my support for giving honoraria for people. Thank you.
Thank you, River, and to you, Mohammed.
Just want to take this opportunity to thank Mixed River for their disclosure. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to hear from lived experiences, and thanks for thinking of this space as a safe space for you to be able to share that personal experience with us. And so I just want to take this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. I hope that's okay. I don't know all of the structure of this place, so not yet.
Thank you both. I did have a question for Ruth myself. I was wondering, in terms of trying to develop this committee and accessibility with folks who may not have cell phones or perhaps access to a computer, are there other sort of ways of looking for these individuals that would be considered, like coming in person to City Hall? Obviously, COVID poses a really big issue right now, but maybe when things get a little bit better.
Thank you, and through you, or to you, yeah, it's hard to believe that 2 years ago we actually had these meetings in person. So we are certainly very aware of the digital, potential digital challenges that people might face, or accessibility challenges. And would also, and I think that is definitely, and I know Mr. Bologna, John has his hand up. I think we're keeping it pretty informal here. I will pass it over to him, because I think it's probably a more broader question around accessibility for any of the meetings. The one thing I will say is we obviously, as we serve a lot of different social service agencies with clients. I know it's always on top of minds how we can make sure that clients, either with support of agencies or even city, can access certain meetings or certain, even surveys or information. And we always look at kind of all the different kind of aspects. For instance, that's why we did not just only do our Get Involved page through our city website, but also made sure that there were copies of surveys available at different agencies, and that staff were available to promote. So I don't have like the perfect solution figured out, but it's definitely something that we are very mindful of.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Then I'll pass it to you, John. Go ahead.
Thank you. Those are great questions, and I know everybody wants to get back to work. It's been a frustrating couple of years going forward. These Zoom type meetings have worked and have done the job that's required, but I know we're all looking at getting back into in-person meetings. So until that happens, if there are opportunities for us to assist members or potential members through the use of technology, assisting them with providing some technology, if they contact us through there, we will see if there's an opportunity for us to provide a laptop or something that may be able to assist people to be able to participate. For us, the important thing is the access and participation. So if there's any way that we can help, ask, and then we'll try to accommodate you as best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I see Councillor ONeil, you had your hand up next. I'll go to you next for this.
Thank you very much. I just want to refer back to something that came up in Blair's presentation that troubled me a little bit. And that was the suggestion by some that some of our committees or boards should have a lawyer on it, an accountant on it. In the 90s, and I served 2 terms in the 90s, we had a lot of boards and committees that had those professionals on. And frankly, I think our committee system today is better because it's community voices. The problem with having a lawyer or an accountant on, it's been my experience back in the 90s, is if you ask them a legal question or a financial question, they were not in a position to give you a legal opinion because they weren't professionally hired by the committee or board. So they would suggest, well, it might be this or it might be that, you should consult your lawyer. And so I don't think there's a lot of value added when we have accountants and lawyers on. Any committee of council can get a legal opinion, and the clerks can correct me if I'm wrong, but they can get a legal opinion from the city solicitor. And that's the one that would, that's the opinion that would carry weight. I see John is waving his hand. I may have said misspoke, so sorry.
They're excellent comments, Councillor ONeil, with respect to membership on committees. Through our EDI lens, we don't discriminate based on positions, based on titles and whatnot. So we're an inclusive group. And yes, we can get legal opinions from our legal department. But what I would caution everybody's understanding that everybody in Kingston is eligible to be members on our various committees. And we welcome everybody who applies to bring their specific skill set to our committees. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I will get to you, Vanessa. I think Mohammed might be adding on to the point. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. To speak to Councillor Neil's question, we are not recommending specific professionals to be nominated for any of these positions, but of course, if someone has those qualifications and they're applying as member of the public, that's completely okay. But there is no recommendation being forwarded to this committee or any other committee where we are suggesting that specific professional designations should be recruited. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed. And Vanessa, to you.
Hi, everyone. I think I'd probably direct this question more towards Ruth and Mohammed in regards to just some of the standards with this committee. I know it's been brought up that including people with lived and living experience would be very helpful. I completely agree. I think it's invaluable, but on page 82 of the agenda that was sent our way, I know mandate in terms of reference was mentioned here about some onboard education and training. I'm just more curious if, just taking into consideration that these individuals, even for myself and a lot of others on this committee, sometimes it's very challenging to go through the procedural and the language around this and some of the terms of reference and whatnot, and just having the right way of participating. Is some of that going to, maybe some of those barriers need to be lifted in order to have people properly participate? Has that come up at all for you, Ruth?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that question. I'm actually going to see if John would be able to help me out here as well, because it certainly is, and I can only appreciate all the information that's being brought forward when I'm being onboarded at a city committee. I cannot speak to the all the details of the onboarding that is happening, because it's mainly being coordinated through the clerk's office, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. But I definitely, I think, again, I really would like to call on John to maybe provide some additional information.
So thank you for that question. I think one of the most important parts of when we do the recruitment is the onboarding, to try to ensure that we provide the right information to the potential members so that they can be effective as they become more in tune with what we're doing here at City Hall. So we're looking at a number of different scenarios with respect to the onboarding. I think one of the first things that we did was to enhance the application form to allow for some of these things to be able to be brought forward as opposed to searching for them. So the onboarding, the orientations, and things of that nature will only enhance the type of members that we're trying to get, and working with them, because we want to remain inclusive. We're not here to try to put barriers in the way or restrict anybody, but we want to be inclusive so that everybody, and I mean everybody, gets an opportunity to participate and be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I will now pass it on to you, River, for your question. And I did also want to notify the committee that I will have to step away at 1:55. So River, if you could kindly take the position as chair for the rest of the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. So I just had one quick point on this topic, is that I fully support possibly just reviewing not even the accessibility, but the with our onboarding process, thinking about how we could address this specifically to people with lived experience, because I know that at least from what I remember of the onboarding for this committee, it was pretty comprehensive, but it was kind of overwhelming, especially for someone who was neurodivergent. But I think that, yeah, just taking a look at how we can make this more inclusive and welcoming for people with lived experience, and maybe even more specific for their experiences, might be a good idea. I'll let John respond to that.
Thank you for that comment. Really appreciate hearing that. I know that when we tried to onboard this committee, there was a number of things that we wanted to bring forward, and perhaps we erred in being too much at one given time. So thank you for that. It'll help us with our onboarding going forward. But I think it is important what you're saying, not to overwhelm people. And that's why this committee appears that it hasn't done much since it was struck, but it has done a lot. At least it's done a lot for me and my staff to understand EDI much more clearly to enhance us going forward. So yeah, we've got some work to do with respect to the onboarding, and we appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Thank you. My second point, and then I want to give the room to Sunita, because I know Sunita is probably jumping in her seat right now, is that I just was wondering, this is just a quick question for Ruth, is do we have any dates? I was looking through the pages 82 and 83. Do we have any dates for when applications are opening for the members of the public, and kind of like everything to do with that? Is that happening in 2022?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair, thanks for that question. I know John will probably jump in as well. I think first, this is still in a proposal, so we first would need to, as we do have a procedural kind of couple of steps to take before this actually gets approved. So we would need to, in Q1, first have to go through committee and council to approve. And then after that, I think depending on the current membership, I will pass it on to the clerk to provide some direction on what that would look like.
Well, thank you for that question once again. I think Janet James, who's leading the recruitment of the members going forward, will probably jump in. We have had a comprehensive review already with respect to the appointments for the upcoming year. A lot of this information is going to be very, very relevant on a go-forward basis when we start the new committees in the new term. Janet, do you want to jump in and add anything on it with respect to particular dates?
Sure, thanks very much. Yep, so as Ruth said, this is still just information right now. It does need to be sort of approved by Housing and Homelessness and then filter up through the process. And then once the recommendation is sort of formally approved by council, then what we would do is undertake a recruitment process, much like the one that you guys all use to apply for this committee. We would have to have a nominations advisory committee meeting to consider the appointments and then make a recommendation back to council. An average recruitment from the time we start advertising to the time an actual appointment is made and formalized by council takes a minimum of 6 weeks to make sure that we have a proper opportunity to do sort of a cast the net far and wide to make sure that we are reaching out to to the proper sort of targeted areas, to put agendas together to actually have the meeting and that sort of thing. So I would think once this is approved by council, then it will be about 6 weeks from then before we would actually have somebody in place to fill that vacancy, if that helps.
Thank you. That is wonderful. All of your responses have been fantastic. I want to give the floor to Sunita, who's been so patient.
Thank you very much, River. And I was just wanting to build on what you and Vanessa had shared earlier. And the flip side of that same situation where someone who is barriered, who hasn't had the experience of joining such meetings in such forums, while it's intimidating, what we also want to make sure that the other individuals on such committees are also welcoming. And I think their EDI understanding and their inclusion and all of that is also going to be just as important. Otherwise, again, it can become a very much of a, either individuals will be just there as a rubber stamp, oh, look at us, we're very diverse in our committee, or they will not be able to step up and speak up. And that is sort of, again, not what we're about. So just wanted to add to that is the flip side of the same coin. Thank you.
That's a great point. Thank you. I'll give the floor to Councillor ONeil.
Thank you. Just very quickly, from this discussion, something came to mind. I know that we had tons of applications. We had and Janet can verify this. We had a huge binder, and the last couple of times we've done applications, nominations committee, and it's wonderful the number of people in the community that want to participate. But what happens between those? And I know that we keep all of those applications on file, and we inform those people if a position comes up again, which was their first, second, or third choice. And that's great. I'm just wondering if those committees that they apply for, and Janet may want to roll her eyes with this suggestion because this is a make work suggestion, but maybe what we can do is send out a group email with the information that the committee you applied for is meeting on this date, and this is the YouTube link that will allow you to view the committee. And that way people have a better handle on those committees they're interested in. That's a suggestion. I'm not sure Janet will be really pleased with that suggestion because that adds to a workload, but it would be a way to get more people engaged.
Thank you. Janet?
Certainly not at all displeased by the suggestion, Councillor ONeil. Just so that so that this committee is aware, once somebody is appointed to a committee, as you know, we reach out to you. We also engage with individuals who have applied to committees but were perhaps not successful. So we do close that loop with them, and we can look at including some information in that letter that we provide to them with the the time and dates of the committees that they've applied to. So if they do want to sort of stay current with what is going on with those committees, then we can let them know that that information, so that they're not only we're closing the loop to let them know that we appreciate their application. Councillor ONeil was right. We did have I think it was over 70 applications for this committee, which was wonderful. So we do. We do like to have that many applications, because it means that our engagement efforts are working. It was a big binder. We did reach out to anybody who wasn't aware, or sorry, wasn't appointed to the committee, and we do also keep all applications on file for a period of 12 months. So if a vacancy does arise midterm as part of our sorry, guys, I was getting a phone call at the same time. We do keep the applications on file. And if there's a vacancy midterm, we do reach out to individuals who had previously applied to ask them whether they want to consider to have their name on the application list for consideration. Sometimes people say yes, but sometimes they'll say, no, I found another opportunity, and they're not available. So we don't automatically put people on. We do reach out to them to ask if they would like to continue, because we don't want to put somebody forward. They've maybe found another opportunity and then they get appointed and they're not, they're not able to fulfill that commitment. So it is a sort of a back and forth two-way discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Just supplemental to what Janet mentioned, though we do formal recruitments once a year per se, we're recruiting all the time. We have people who contact us and look for information with respect to specific committees. MAC is one of them that I constantly get called on. So if people want to put their applications forward, we accept them and also let them know when the meetings are happening, if they want a copy of the mandate so that they can be fully informed what the role and responsibility are of the committee. So we try to take every opportunity to be able to recruit through social media, through online, through print. And that I think is what has provided us with success in our 3 R's, the recruitment, the retention, and the recognition that we strive for in the clerk's department, in particular in the city as a whole. So, we have certainly enhanced our recruitment efforts. And with the EDI lens that I keep referring to, I think we'll be more successful in trying to get inclusion within all our committees the best that we can. So this is just one small step going forward, and we look forward to continuing that journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I wasn't sure, maybe Derek can help me out. Were we able to pass motions for this?
There's no sort of motion required at this point, River. It's you've provided feedback to the staff, and they will then incorporate it as they bring the reports up. However, if there are no further committee questions or comments at this time, we could open it to public comments to see if the member of the public wishes to speak. So if that's all right by you?
Yes.
All right, so I'll quickly mention to any members of the public, if they wish to speak or make a comment, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. So it's the small button at the bottom of your screen. If you do wish to speak, please raise your hand and then we can invite you into the meeting. But I am not seeing any hands, River. So if there's no more questions or comments from the committee, we can carry on with the agenda then.
Thank you. So I guess that we then go to the date and time of the next meeting. The next meeting for this committee will be Monday, February 28th, 2022 at 1 p.m. That's okay with everybody. And then next we can adjourn the meeting.
We just need a mover and a seconder and a vote
yes.
for the adjournment.
I will move.
So, all right, and then I also see Councillor ONeil. All right.
And we'll,
oh, you go ahead.
Pardon me, I was just going to say, and then we'll just, people sometimes, it's an odd quirk that we actually have to vote on adjournment. So if you call a vote, River, and people vote, and then we'll be done.
Yeah, if we could see a raise of hands. Perfect. Thank you so much. Meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Everybody.